Welcome again. We've had our numbers have grown. Welcome. So we are working our way through the Lamrim Chenmo, Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. And we are really on a path. That's really, when I think about these teachings, it's a really wonderful opportunity to actually get somewhere. And then, of course, conversely, you find out you're already there. But so much of our life often is more about going in circles, really, to a big degree. I like this. This is kind of interesting. I've learned this lesson. I've learned this thing. Oops, I've learned this lesson again. And I've learned it again. And a day will come and a day will go, and I find that, wow, here is some real important revelation in my life. And then 2 days later, it's Tuesday. And I'm doing the same things I was doing last Tuesday. And a day will come and a day will go. A week will come, a week will go. And we've all learned things. We've all known things. We've all had experiences that we found meaningful. And somehow, it still comes back to being Thursday again. And I'm still doing the same things I was doing a year ago. And I still have the same habits, the same tendencies, the same predispositions. In essence, nothing irreversible has really happened, even though I've had these incredible opportunities, great revelations, maybe even blessings, I've had the really wonderful honor of helping host His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and have helped coordinate 3 days of teachings and so forth. And it was a really powerful learning experience for me early on in my monastic life. It was literally the first job they gave me when I just came back from India. I was ordained. I was a full-fledged monk for something like 3.5 weeks. I mean, it doesn't get much lower than that, right? And then they say, well, will you help host His Holiness the Dalai Lama? Will you take this on and be part of the coordinating team? And phenomenal, incredible opportunity. And so I got to do that, and it was a year of preparation. You got to learn everything from, these are 3,000 and 6,000 seat venues. You learned about stage production, ticket sales, and contracts, and video production teams, and just all the stuff that a little lowly monk doesn't know much about. And it was just a big endeavor. But I'm bringing it up because in this process of a year, it all accumulated to these incredible days of teaching and some wonderful blessings by His Holiness. But also in that, I saw just about everything that is detrimental about Dharma practice as well. And it really disillusioned me, and almost to a point where I didn't know how to make my way back. And I share that the desire to receive a blessing, the desire to be around His Holiness, the clinging to get nearby, maybe He'll see me, maybe He'll touch me, maybe I'll get a blessing. Some people out front that showed up without a ticket. And I was fortunate because I also had all the tickets, and these people who showed up with the least little hope, and they got in, That was nice. But there was this other side of, I really should get an audience. I should get more time. I should be backstage. This clinging and this opportunity to be in the presence of this incredible being who's going to give these teachings on compassion and selflessness. And when we invited people to come and attend maybe a smaller meeting, literally to watch people push and shove so they can be there, so they can get the blessing. And it just looked pretty antithetical to the idea of His Holiness is talking about compassion. And he's talking, the most compassionate thing might be to let someone else go rather than me, and I want that. And this visit taught me a lot of things. There's lots of things that I saw around the clinging attachment of wanting a blessing or that special moment. And some people got those, and some people didn't. Everyone who attended, I think, had this incredible opportunity. But in the same time, I think that there was also a loss of the importance and relevance of what we'll be talking about tonight is the Dharma. His Holiness, when asked, a woman, asking, can you bless my mala? His Holiness stopping and saying, sure, yeah, of course I can bless that. But the real blessings are the teaching. And then do the blessing and give it back. And I think that all too often we may look for that particular blessing, look for that wonderful moment, or attend an initiation. And then it's Thursday next week. And ultimately, what have I done to change? The blessings are inspiration. The blessings are seeds. They're nice. They're important. But they're important if we go out and do something with them. And if I'm there hearing a teaching, well, the real gift is to put them into practice. And then we're on a path. Then we're doing something. And too many times I think that, I just have seen people get stuck in the next, there's a book called Spiritual Materialism. Gets caught in the trappings of practice, how much I know. And the real essence isn't how much we know, it's what we do. It's what do I do with this practice? And the key instructions, understanding them and putting them into place, make all the difference in our lives. Not reading another book, not attending another blessing ceremony, not going to that next retreat. It's what I do after the retreat. It's what I do in between Dharma teachings. And this Lamrim is really set up in a way to give you the optimum opportunity to transform your experience of phenomenon and clear away the delusion that just envelopes us. It's the opportunity to really purify our mind and to accumulate both merit and wisdom in this path. So in this path, we've taken a look at the Dharma itself, this particular teaching, then the conditions of, if I'm going to make progress, what's the best way to meditate? And what is an environment? So we went through that. And then we thought, okay, well, now I'm ready. I can see that there's a path. I can create the proper conditions to really prepare my mind. Now, what do I start preparing my mind to address? Where do I go on this path? And we called to mind these preparatory practices. What do I turn my mind to? And we talked about accumulating a reliance upon a teacher, how to be a good student. I mean, it's just a path. It's taking you to the next step. And now that we're ready, well, what's the first thing to reflect upon was this rare and precious human rebirth that we have. And so there's these 18 qualities. We thought about what a gift it is, how rare it is to have the opportunities that we have, to have access to Dharma teachings at the click of a mouse. I mean, that just blows me away. I was watching some the other day online. You can just click, and I'm listening to a teacher I'd hoped my whole life to maybe get in a room with, and I can click and listen. It's amazing. So we have this incredible opportunity. We have opportunity leisure. We have education, we have resources, and we have the teachings of enlightenment right here, of no more suffering. We have it. And as soon as we realize that you have right now a birth that has taken eons to get, a life that is just fragile, but currently on that perfect balance of enough suffering and enough opportunity that I can become enlightened. You have all the seeds for enlightenment, and you're there right now. We have it. And really, to know the advantage of taking advantage of this life. Then the next thought, so we did a week with that. The next week was, well, we're not going to have it forever. You know, and that's last week's talk. The nature of impermanence. This body's going to come and go. This life that we've worked so hard for will end. This physical form will end. And if we really grasp this and get it anywhere from a philosophical idea to a direct realization that today could be our last day, that really bears in mind what's really important. I have this incredible opportunity of enlightenment. What am I doing with this day that will never come again? What am I doing with my life? And so we went through the points of death. Death is certain, time of death uncertain. That's just the way it is. And the third point being, the only thing that can help you at the time of death is how you lived your life. Your karma is what goes on. And the physical form will end. Consciousness continues. Did I use this life to continue a path of enlightenment? To become enlightened in this lifetime, or if not this lifetime, set the seeds for a continued path of enlightenment, of even more realization, to really eliminate suffering for myself and others. So this is why we reflect on that we don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. We don't know if it's 10 years from now. We don't know if it's 20 years. We don't know if it's quick. We don't know if it's sudden. But we do know that every day that we're awake, we are closer to our death. But we don't really think about that very often. And so last week was the reflection that we have this rare and precious opportunity right now. And it's taken a long time and a lot of effort to get here. And you have. You've earned it. You're here. And now this opportunity we don't want to waste. And that's why we really bring to mind the meditations on death, this 9-point meditation. And so last week's invitation was to take some time every day and reflect on that. And so now we're coming into the next topic. I've got this incredible opportunity. I have all the conditions to be enlightened right now. I have the essence of enlightenment with me. You have it. We have a rare and precious human rebirth. We have everything to enlighten right now. We have the teachings. We have the proper conditions. It's all right here. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to not waste it? And within the Buddhist teachings, now granted, there's a whole framework that actually explains the nature of existence itself. That this is a physical form that's giving a rise based upon causes and conditions, karmic seeds that allow me to perceive myself as human and you as human, and etc. But that'll change. That this physical form will end, and based on my karmic conditions and seeds, I'll start seeing things different. And the phenomena outside of myself, all phenomena that I'm experiencing, is inherently empty of any intrinsic existence. My experience of you, my experience of everything, is subjective and relational to how I'm experiencing through my karma. So there's just this basic teaching on this. And it says that this body will go, and then based on how I lived, I'm going to be on another life, and I'll be experiencing everything very differently. Could be a bird. Could be a pleasure being in heaven realms. Could be could be another human life. And so within this vast and very clear teachings of the nature of conditioned existence, there's this this outline, and it basically says what the problem is and what the solution is. And knowing that does not help you a whole lot, which is fascinating. Doing something about it might. And so if we understand this, and let's say, if we're going to embark on this path, if we're going to travel this path, well, we're going to need something to depend on. We're going to need some resolve. We're ultimately going to need some faith that it's a reliable path, right? Why are we going to put out effort if I don't think it's going to get me anywhere? And within Buddhism, there's never the idea of blind faith. It's in the text. I read the text. It's right here. Yeah. No, it's well, let's see if that works. Let's see if that holds up to debate. Let's see if that holds up to reason. Let's test it and see what the results are. And so within this path, if we're going to progress, we've got a map that we can read and we can test to see where it goes. But in order to have much faith in it, we're going to have to develop, and this is our starting point here, is this idea of refuge, of taking refuge in this path. If I believe that this path can take me to no more suffering, if I believe it's going to get me where I want to go, if I believe that it's going to be something that's dependable, that this map is going to work, it's going to make all the difference. Because if I just have an idea, well, it'll get me to the park, but I'm not sure if it'll get me down to Glenwood. And I'm not sure it's really going to get me anywhere. And then I can make a lot of turns really quickly, and I can look for something else that's going to make me feel good. So in this sense, we really want to cultivate refuge. And refuge in this sense, when you think about refuge, what do we, when you think refuge, what do we think? Refuge, it's where we go for safety. It's something we can depend upon. When the kids get hurt, mom is refuge, right? And in this life that we have, what can you depend on? And ultimately, what's that? Change. Yeah, you can depend on change, that's for sure. Those are 3 marks of existence. Right? Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. That's the nature of things. So those are dependable, which are in line with Dharma. Ultimately, when we think about anything in conditioned existence, we would say is undependable. That there's no one outside of yourself you can depend on. There's nothing in conditioned existence that's going to last, because it's going to change. Your job's not going to last. Your parents aren't going to last. Your relationships aren't going to last. That kale chip / cookie did not last. I had it earlier. It was really good. I mean, it may not sound, it was really good. So, it didn't last though. And anything in conditioned existence, we can't really depend on, because it's not going to be there for us. This conditioned existence of samsara, there's nothing here that's dependable, so what can we depend on? And in Buddhism, we talk about taking refuge in the 3 jewels. The 3 jewels. And all of these need to be beyond conditioned existence. So the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The Buddha. An enlightened being that taught the path to enlightenment. That really, in our existence, our time of existence, was able to elaborate the cause of suffering and the path to end it. Now, can we have faith that he existed? Can we have faith that he taught a true path? Well, just because somebody told you so, I'm going to say that's not proper. You're going to have to develop that over time. And, logically we can look at that and we can say, well, there's signs of a historical Buddha. I don't think too many people would debate that issue. And there was a teacher that traveled for 40 years, gave these teachings. There's been a history and a lineage of thousands of people that have followed these teachings. And so we can start to see, well, can I have some faith? Yeah, that he existed. Some faith that a lot of people seem to benefit from it. And still not enough initially. We have to know, well, if he taught a path to no more suffering, is there some evidence of this? Are there some people that have become enlightened following this path? And we want to look for that and start paying attention. And, there's lots of texts that would indicate there are many beings that have become enlightened and many people that had attained these certain states, and you can look into that. But even that's hearsay, and even that's a text that says maybe this, or maybe you will meet someone, maybe you will have in your lifetime an opportunity to experience people that purely practice a path that obtain certain states. In my own lifetime, I have had such experiences, to be with someone at time of death and watch that experience and see signs of great attainment. And so I've been really fortunate to have had those. However, you can look at people, you can look at teachers, and that was our starting point, was to look at teachers and see if we could find some that can exhibit a lessening of delusion, of unethical behavior, a lessening of these afflictions of the mind. And can we meet people like that? Can we see that? Can we see that there's a path that does do that? And so we start paying attention. And if we can start to cultivate some faith then based on actual observation, well, here's a teacher I met, and here's someone that has practiced path, and they don't seem to be caught up in attachment. They don't seem to suffer much. They seem to have a lot of love and compassion. You start noticing these things. But if we're really going to have some refuge in that, initially there's got to be some reason that makes you believe I want to at least give it the benefit of the doubt initially. And so one person I just throw out there, Dalai Lama, okay? His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, pretty good example. He's going to tell you he's a simple monk, and all that other stuff's just, shouldn't expect much from him. But you can look at someone like that, and I would just say, strictly from observation, he's going to be 80 this year in July. He's going to be 80. Now, as I mentioned, I was fortunate enough to have been involved with organizing, more than once actually. And when you see His Holiness, and at his age and his schedule, waking up at 3 o'clock, doing his practice, eating, meeting after meeting, getting on a plane, traveling, getting off a plane. As soon as you get off the plane, there's all these people to greet. And then there's a meeting, and then there's a blessing of an environment, in our case, the Tibetan committee, and then the other meetings, and then into a teaching, and then you're giving a public talk to thousands of people, and then you on to a next one. You look at a schedule from 3 a.m. to, I have no idea when he ever went to bed. Off a plane and into a new plane. And at that time, 70s, he's delivering incredible teachings precisely and perfectly. If you look at his entourage, who are much younger than him, that travel with him, here's what they look like. They're wiped out. So for me, I would look at this and I would say, this is an exceptional being, just on that level alone. That to be able to have his incredible clarity with any person he's talking to, he's all there. You've got 100% of his attention, and you can just feel it. It's palpable, and he's directly there for you. And then he's on for the next one, and then for the next one. And I will say, if you look around, you're going to start noticing some examples of incredible beings that are practicing Buddhism. These teachers, and you're going to notice that they're all there when you're talking to them. And they're clear, and they're not afflicted. They're not caught up in image and ego and worry and fear or depression. And you'll see them. So we start noticing this. If I'm going to really have some refuge, I want to know that there is a lineage of people that have followed this path, and that it gets you somewhere. So when we think about refuge, we really want to ultimately say, if we've seen enough evidence of this, maybe we can give it the benefit of the doubt. That, okay, there's a lot of people, there's been a path, there's been these kind people that I've seen that are less afflicted than others, and I can start to establish some faith that there was a Buddha that taught a path to enlightenment, and really be able to lean into that a little bit. But again, initially, it's going to be very objective and noticing, not just because. And for example, I just told you a story, but, that's hearsay, right? You need to have your own experience. You need to start paying attention to people on a Buddhist path. Start listening to teachers on a Buddhist path, and start noticing, are they teaching me things that actually lead to no more suffering? And then, are they actually doing it themselves? That's also very important. We want to see that there are teachers that have subdued mental afflictions in their own life, and see if they've, and we can learn from their wisdom. So we can have faith in those teachers. So, but the ultimate refuge is the Buddha himself, and there are more than one Buddha. There's, we have the historical one, but there's, endless amounts of enlightened beings. The second jewel is the Dharma. The Dharma, in this case we're talking about the Buddha Dharma, the teachings that lead to enlightenment. Now, are these something that we can rely on? And there's the ultimate Dharma jewel, which is essentially the nature of existence itself. It's the truth. Dharma basically is about the truth. It's the realization of the nature of reality. And all of Buddhist teachings are basically going, once you realize the nature of reality, there's no more suffering. You're liberated. There's no more delusion. There's the delusion that's been created by our imprints prevent us from seeing the nature of reality as it is. And the goal is to be liberated. So the ultimate Dharma is the truth of phenomena, of nature, of yourself. And that's the ultimate thing that we rely upon, that there is something there beyond this physical form, that there is a truth that pervades all of this existence. And that is the ultimate Dharma jewel we take refuge in. Conventionally, there's all these teachings. They'd say there's 84,000 teachings. That, a lot of study, 84,000. 84,000 mental afflictions, 84,000 teachings. And, but that there's these teachings that we can depend upon that will help clear away delusion that's really creating all these mental afflictions. So that's something we need to initially, again, kind of wade into. Is what's being taught, does it make sense? And I'm going to try it if it does make sense. And I'm going to see if I'm going to be a little less afflicted with anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, whatever my mental afflictions are, grasping the self. I'm going to test it out. You're not going to get a deep refuge without some actual participation consciously with it, and to see if it works. The third jewel is the Sangha. And in this sense, a Sangha jewel is not, like we're a Sangha. The word gets used here in the Western terms here as a Sangha, as a group of people in a sense. But that's really not what it meant in these terms. The Sangha are the other enlightened beings, the Arhats, the beings that have attained nirvana. Maybe not fully enlightened beings yet, but they're attained nirvana. They're free of karmic afflictions. And so we have all these beings that have made it beyond conditioned existence. Again, everything needs to be beyond. If we're going to rely on it, it needs to be beyond conditioned existence. Conditioned existence, by definition, is afflicted with delusion. There's nothing in a conditioned existence that we can really ultimately depend on. So the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, okay? And the Sangha are these arhats and aryas, and they have Dharma protectors that are beyond samsara and so forth. Dakas, dakinis, that we can depend on. And so the analogy with it often is used that the Buddha's the doctor, the Dharma is the medicine, and the Sangha are like the healthcare industry. The nurses and the physical therapists and, all that. And that our biggest affliction is delusion. And the physician is going to prescribe the path to enlightenment. The Dharma is that medicine. And then we have that supporting community that we can rely upon. Now, as we all know, if we don't take medicine, it doesn't work very well. And so the idea is that, we need to apply it and see if it works. Now with the Sangha, what do we rely on? Well, if you're not on first name terms with too many arhats, the next tier within Sangha would be ordained monastics. That's really the Sangha they're talking about on a conventional level, is ordained monastics that have devoted their life to spiritual practice, that have taken liberation vows and taken monastic vows and given up worldly attachment. And so wherever there's, I think it's 4 or more gathered, that can create a Sangha, in a sense. There's a collective enough merit there. And then more conventionally, here we are, a group of people physically here and those online that have come together in a sense of community to practice the path, to learn the Buddha Dharma, that forms a Sangha. So when we think of it in those terms, this is conditioned. We all have delusion. But there's worse people we could be hanging out with. Probably wouldn't have to go that far, to be honest with you. So when we think about refuge then, and I was reflecting today, is all day long we take refuge in things and other people. And all day long we take refuge in things that aren't really going to help. Are we taking refuge in our relationship, in our job, in the chocolate bar? I mean, what do we do when times get hard? What do we depend on? And where do we go for comfort? And that's really what we want to do when we talk about taking refuge, is where do we really go for comfort? And if you can have a refuge of the 3 jewels, you have a comfort that's always there, no matter what, that is as dependable as you can get. The body's not going to help. The friends aren't going to help. The job's not going to help. Okay, I'm on a banana split right now. Not going to help. Feel good for a little while. These are temporary little patches, little band-aids to give comfort in a moment, but not dependable. When we think about fitness and exercise, we can work out all we want. It's still not going to be any reliance that that's going to help you live any longer, right? Or that you'll get the results you want. There's nothing there. But an understanding and a refuge in this much deeper truth is something that will be there. It's something that will always be there. And if I have a refuge in it, no matter what's happening in my life, I can deal with it. Because I'm going to understand that the nature of whatever's happening is only arising in dependence upon the causes and conditions of what's happening. And the only thing that matters is how I respond to it. Every event that we have in our life can help us on the path to enlightenment. Every event that happens in your life is a cause for your enlightenment. Every person that you meet in your life is a cause for enlightenment and is a teacher to you. When you have the refuge and understanding that this is just one physical form that will come and go in an array of endless physical forms that you've had many, many times, you're not going to get all caught up in the day-to-day worry, fear, anxiety, and resentment. When you can really rest in the consciousness that's going to continue from life to life, to know that I'm on a path, a dependable path, that ultimately leads to the cessation of suffering for self and others. Wow. Whether or not somebody doesn't like me is not going to be such a big deal. Whether or not I got that vacation is not going to be that big a deal. Whether or not I lose my leg is not going to be that big a deal. Because that's one leg of one life of many lives. What's going to ultimately matter is, as I purify my karma, having lost a leg, I'm going to see more clearly, what am I doing that's going to make the best use of my life? The life that I've worked eons for. And what's going to make use of that is cultivating wisdom to see the nature of reality more clearly. And the only way that's going to happen is if my behaviors and habits change. If I want to meditate all day long on truth and nature of reality, and I go out and I lie on my income tax, I'm being dishonest here, but I want the nature of truth here. Not going to work so well. If I spend all my time in meditation and contemplation and understanding of the depths of the nature of phenomenon, but I cling to my negative behaviors, it's like holding a hot coal. I'm just burning myself. I'm never going to get anywhere. So there's a combination of things on this path. One is to create the good conditions to be able to see clearly, to purify my karmic imprints, to observe mentally the impermanent nature of things, to start to see how relational they really are, and that they're not so independent and not so inherently existent, and keep responding to life in a more accurate way. Ultimately, all the Buddhist path is simply learning to see things clearly. But how much of our day are we just caught up in worldly concerns? I mean, how much of our day are we thinking about the nature of making the best use of this moment to cultivate good karmic imprints and wisdom? And how much of the day are we thinking about what's for dessert? Whenever we come here, a lot of dessert comes up. I'm not sure why. We're going to have pasta for dinner later, right? Yeah, okay. So, that's not dessert. I'm just making a point. How much of our day is just caught up in gain and loss, pain and pleasure, praise, criticism, good reputation, bad reputation, the 8 worldly concerns? It dominates most of our day. Most of our day is spent on worries and fears and concerns that just tentacles trapping us more in samsara, trapping us more in worldly stuff, and the vacation, and the jacuzzi, and the fear that this person may or may not be here tomorrow, or that person in this relationship may not work, or I may or may not get this raise, or I may or may not get this certificate. Of all this stuff in this one physical form, which does not have me taking any refuge in a life beyond this form, or the actual nature of all things interrelated with others. I'm the center of the universe, and all I think about is what's going to make me feel good. And I'm going to try to rearrange worldly existence to make me feel good as much as possible, and I hope I get lucky a lot. And then you can have everything go exactly your way, and you can be depressed, sad, worried, sitting in a nice house with climate control and that really cool bed that you finally got, and still be abjectly miserable, can't you? So this refuge is a refuge in the nature of reality. It's something you can actually depend upon. It's something that you, no matter what's happening in life, well, we understand how to deal with it. It's a path to understanding that every moment of your life is an opportunity to remove suffering. What a gift. And when that happens, when I break my leg, it's not, poor me, I broke my leg. It's, wow, I just purified some karma in this lifetime. Got rid of that. And it's just a leg, and it will change. At times it's been healthy, at other times it's been broken. And instead of asking, why me? Well, why not me? Why not me? Other people break legs. Other people have lots of worse things happen. It's just a much more realistic way of living, and a refuge that takes place ultimately in the nature of reality. It's something you can depend on. And it's something that's there day and night. Whether you're in prison, whether you're in Tahiti on a beach, whether you've got that perfect partner, or whether they're divorcing you, it's always there. It's something you can rely on. So cultivating this refuge is really the foundational piece of reminding ourselves what is it that's true and what is it that'll still be here. Because the body won't be, your friends won't be, your job won't be, your house won't be. What will be and continue is the nature of your consciousness as it goes from life to life, its interdependence and connection with all living things, and a path that has, over time, going on, getting closer to 3,000 years now, of a lineage of people that have removed suffering, and that you can have access to. And even if it seems impossible, I mean, I'm a kid that I used to live under a bridge under the I-70. 20 years old. Who would have thought I'd ever meet anybody? Who would have thought I would ever have an opportunity to speak with somebody of wisdom and knowledge? I was a kid who used to live under a bridge. All of you can meet those beings. All of you have the seed of enlightenment. All of you have the essence of enlightenment. And all the lamas will tell you that. It's already there with you. And all the conditions for the path are there with you. The problem is we don't spend much time thinking about the path. We get caught up in the 8 worldly concerns. We get caught up in what we're going to do for fun tomorrow. Rather than, how do I make the best use of a rare and precious human rebirth today? That's something you can rely on as a path. So cultivating the refuge in the 3 jewels is something to really reflect on. Is over this week is our next contemplation for the week. Is what can I rely on? And does this path make sense? Does it seem to remove suffering? Are the things that I attach to and grab onto in this, are they dependable? Is there anything in this life that you can really, it's going to grant you any lasting happiness? And Buddhism will say, yeah. And it's already here. You have all the enlightened qualities of genuine well-being, inner peace, tranquility, and enlightenment already. And the only thing in the way is my deluded grasping unto a sense of me, John, being independent, separate from you, and more important than all of you. Much more important. And I'm not seeing how interdependent I am with you, and I don't see the empty nature of things. And by empty nature of things, it just means that things are not, they're all interdependent, and they're changing, and they're arising in dependence upon my mood. I see you in dependence upon my mood and my environment and my attitude, right? That's how we judge people. And you could see the same person in 2 days and have totally different opinions of them. But we think my opinion of them is who they are. Even if I've only met them for an hour. Or if that person that did something 10 years ago, and they did something really mean, and I'll tell you, man, that guy, he's really mean. 10 years ago, he did this. Like we haven't done something 10 years ago. Or we've never hurt anyone. It's just this phenomenal mind of ours that just labels and tells stories about everything. It's a fascinating storyteller, our mind. And it's so mesmerizing that we get caught up in it all day long. And we forget. We forget what truly matters. And what's going to live on when this physical form ends is how we lived our life. Did we cultivate harmlessness, goodwill, loving kindness, compassion? Or did I grasp onto myself as being more important than you and cultivate anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, envy? And where are those mental afflictions really coming from? Not out there. There's no source of your mental affliction that's outside of your mind. Doesn't exist there. And if you start paying attention, we'll see that. But because we get caught up in worldly concerns and caught up in the storytelling, we really think that if that person was different, I would be happy. If you would all just buck up and do things the way I would like, I would be happy. And we spend a lot of time and energy focusing on that, rather than the nature of our mind. And so this is something to rely upon then, is a teaching that has us look at the actual source of our mental afflictions. Look at the source of phenomena. That there is an authentic lineage that we can depend upon. And you're not going to have that initially. And if you did, I would say check it. We don't want blind faith. I don't have much value in blind faith. My teachers don't have much value in blind faith. Faith built upon actual demonstrated cause and effect, checking, testing. In my own life of the last 30 years, I noted that the guy that used to live under the bridge, that used to hurt people, that used to have lots of mental afflictions and abuse, and I was abusive, not abused. I was a harmful being. I started doing something different 30 years ago, and that was starting to ask, how can I help? How can I be of benefit? How can I do the right thing? And by asking that question, I went from the guy who's living on a couch or under a bridge to the incredible journey that became a parent, a counselor, a school teacher, a Buddhist, eventually a monk, here today. And in my own personal experience, I noted that my needs were always met when I did the next right thing. I always had food, I always had clothing. They came, and the real cause for resources is actually generosity. That's the real cause for resources. So if you start paying attention to this and it takes some faith initially, a bit of a leap of faith, but just a leap, a little bit. And then if you do it again and again and again and again, and then you start noticing, well, this is something I can now really lean into. But at first, it's a bit like, anyone ever do those trust falls? Yeah, okay, there's some people like that. You did a trust fall, blindfolded, put your arms together and fall back and hope they catch you. Well, that's kind of what this is like. Is you've actually seen the people. They are there. They're blindfolding you. They tell you they're going to catch you. So it's not like you just jump up and fall back. It's, you've thought about this. You see that there's people here. And I'm going to put some faith and I'm going to lean back into it and I'm going to try it. And then they catch you. And then it's like that. Okay, well, then I can lean a little more and a little more. And so initially, though, we need to test it. The only way to test it is you need to start paying attention. So we take these teachings that we have and we try them out. So last week, really reflecting, if you noticed, maybe you noticed, how thinking about death helped you be more alive today. I mean, that's what happened to me. When I reflected on death over the week, it really made me more alive today. And that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to get the realization that I can really make good use of my life. And so now, we want you to think about the teaching of the nature of this path. Is this something that makes sense to you? Is this something I can rely upon? Or is it these worldly concerns that are going to provide me lasting happiness? And the beauty of this teaching on refuge is that even if you don't believe in Buddha, even if you don't believe in consciousness beyond this life, applying these same principles, which is pretty simply put, at the time of death, what will matter to you? And is it how many vacations you had? What can you really depend upon in your relationships and all that? Ultimately, at the time of death, if you're an atheist and have no use for reincarnation, the same principles apply because it's just about finding truth. At the time of death, what will matter is how you lived your life. And you'll look back. Was I kind? Was my life meaningful? Do my loved ones know they're loved? That was a big lesson from last week. Remember that? If I remember this could be my last day, I remember to tell my loved ones I love them. This is the same way to eliminate a lot of mental afflictions in your life, regardless of whether you believe in Buddhism or consciousness beyond a physical form of this one. And so the beauty of this is you'll start noticing if I stop getting caught up in over-exaggerating the qualities of my house, car, relationship, job, and how much happiness they can actually give me, and notice that they actually have the seeds of my suffering. It's what I worry about. It's what I stress over. It's what I get all caught up in. And notice that my real happiness and well-being comes from how I live my life, my ethics, my values, and showing up in a way that's meaningful and beneficial. Then you can build this level of refuge without having to have some big blind faith in anything beyond it. You can just start testing it. Will I feel better if I tell all my friends how angry I am at so-and-so? Right? Or, is it going to be healthier to understand that different people have different thoughts and feelings, and they're entitled to their opinions, and that every minute of anger I have, I'm losing 60 seconds of happiness? It's not the things outside of yourself that are the source of our suffering, right? Pema children. It's how I relate to them. And you will find that same quote. I was just on a thing, I post a quote every day. So I was doing like 5 days ahead. And I read that same wisdom in like 10 other people. Non-Buddhist, Christian, just going even back to Greek classic philosophy. It's the same thing. The source of our suffering is not outside ourselves. It's how we relate to it that is. It's how I label it. It's in my mind. If we start paying attention to that, well, we have something we can take some refuge in. It's, instead of me getting a broken leg, you know what the real problem is? I think I shouldn't get a broken leg. Where is that written? What rule in life says my leg shouldn't get broken? I mean, other people, yeah, that's fine. It's a different rule book. But the real source of my suffering is I just don't live in accordance with reality. And for some reason, I think my life should be different. I shouldn't get ill. My friends should love me. My job should last. My relationship should be happy. Yeah, good luck. But if we live in reality, we'll start to see these truths. So is this something we can depend on? So that's the thing to reflect on, is where is the source of our happiness and suffering? And is it really in the things outside of myself, can I depend on those? If I work out and exercise every day, is that going to guarantee me a long life? What can I depend on? So, a reflection to cultivate some refuge. And also, it's not bad to take a look at teachings that seem to make sense in this Buddhist path. So, we, and I'm not sure it'll be next week or a week after, normally within our tradition we start a Buddhist teaching with taking refuge. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then we add aspiration of bodhicitta through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes. That's the 6 perfections. By practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that's prayer said 3 times before any Dharma teaching, so that we can recall the refuge that we can really rely upon, and then set the motivation that I'm here to cultivate the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom, for enlightenment. And I'm doing it not just for me, I'm doing it for all living beings. And so, I don't just have us say those words, I want us to kind of understand what we're saying when we invite you to have that opportunity. So maybe next week we'll unpack that a bit. But this week is really to cultivate refuge. So again, we're now on this path. We're on a path. We're going somewhere. We got a map, we got a guidebook, and now we want to develop some confidence in it. Start paying attention. And ask yourself each day, what am I doing that I'll feel good about tomorrow? Or is it just a temporary refuge? You know, sometimes a temporary refuge, again, there's nothing wrong with exercising and working out, right? Healthy, it's going to help you generally create good conditions. That's fine. Am I doing it so I look good? Or am I doing it so I'll be healthier to truly be a benefit in this lifetime? 2 different ways of looking at something. Am I eating this banana split so that I can be really healthy? And I'm still trying to work that angle. But am I just, taking a little dessert to relax and enjoy and have a little balance in my life? You know, instead of being too tight and strict and this is how we live life. You know, sometimes our actions of a bit of leisure are just perfectly fine and balanced. Sometimes it's the most spiritual thing you can do to sit down and watch. What did we watch? We watched some of the funniest moments of Ellen DeGeneres and giggled a lot. Sometimes that's a nice thing to do, to lighten up for a bit. But ultimately, though, the real thing is to understand that everything we're doing, are we doing it for the conditions to make the most meaningful opportunities of the life that you have today for yourself and others? And we could be saying prayers, but there's nothing spiritual about my prayers. There's nothing spiritual about my mala. What makes it spiritual is why I'm doing it. You know, I could be doing it to look good. I could be doing it out of fear. I can be doing it for the benefit of all beings. I can be doing it to set intention and aspirations that plant seeds that I will continue in multiple lives on a path to enlightenment for benefit of all beings. You know, that's spiritual, but the spiritual is in my mind. It's not in the mala. And that's where I started with, the outer activities that people look for. Our spiritualness is in our mind. And that's what we want to start working on. What are my habits and tendencies? And when I leave, am I working on making a good use of my life in a day that will never come again? And if you start doing that, there's something you can start depending upon. That whatever thing happens in your life, the outer circumstances, you can turn that into Dharma. You can turn it into merit and wisdom by how you respond. So that's the idea this week, is to cultivate refuge, and the refuge in the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And again, bringing it back to little steps to the big steps. The Buddha, are there teachers and teachings in this lineage that make sense, that are good examples of a mind that's enlightened? Taping it down, are there some good examples of people that are less messed up? And are they exhibiting a mind that has subdued mental afflictions? Important. Dharma, are there teachings, are these teachings about the nature of phenomena and my outer circumstances and me, does that hold up? Does it make sense? Does that eliminate mental afflictions? Is it my attachments and anger that creates problem? We would say, yeah. If I see myself as interrelated and notice that my attitudes about these things, my motivations, has a lot to do with how I'm experiencing them, well, now we're more on Dharma, something we can depend upon. Will that reduce my mental afflictions? Sangha. Can I rely upon, that's the thing, do we continue to hang out with people and that are not particularly healthy for us, that are not particularly on any kind of path? Can we start putting ourselves in healthier environments? That's something on a very conventional level. We can spend a little more time around, and even if it's not physically, like here we've got this group, at home, what am I attending to, what am I putting in my mind? Because that's our other food, what we put in our mind. So, it could be reading and doing things outside of this that fuel our mind, that have Dharma teachings as well. So, Sangha, are there people in our lives that we really continue to hang out with that just keep us more trapped in samsara? Are there some people that are on a path? And we can spend some time there. Ultimately, to put ourselves in the company of enlightened beings. So that's the refuge in the three jewels. So that's the next level. So our first meditation was on the precious human life. Second one was on death. And now we're entering into taking refuge. All right. We're getting ready to wrap. So, I did announcements already. We'll do a little dedication. So karmically, we'd say that the weight of any activity that we do is weighted mostly by our motivation. That's why we set a good intention at the start. Then we do an activity. We try to do it as purely as possible, attending here. And then we have a dedication at the end. And this dedication, that all the merit and wisdom accumulate here today, we can dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. And that's like putting it in the pool of merit for all beings. And they say it doesn't get used up. So I invite all of you to do a little dedication with us, dedicating the merit, wisdom, and merit for the benefit of all beings, that they can be free of suffering. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we have accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use this merit and wisdom to purify our own minds, to cultivate the wisdom of enlightenment, so that we can truly be of benefit to all beings. Thank you all. Once again, an honor and a joy to share Wednesday with you and all of you online. May you be well, happy, and try to stay out of trouble. Okay.